How are things going here for you?
Slow and steady. Nothing out of the ordinary, really. I tell you, Dad, I'm really sorry that this has happened, and I love you a lot.
I love you too.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
We haven't always shown it a lot, but I do love him a great deal.
I love you.
Previously on this channel, we took a look at the life and crimes of convicted serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. So if you haven't seen that video, go and watch that episode first, and then come back to this one. But there were a lot of comments, and there's been a lot of stories over the years and judgment passed on to Jeffrey's father, Lionel.
Parents just naturally, I mean, any parent that really cares, they just first of all say, gee, I feel guilty. You know, there's just feelings of guilt. What happened? What did I do? What could I have done? And so that's a normal parental reaction.
Born on July the 29th, 1936, Lionel Dahmer reportedly had a decent upbringing, describing his own dad as, quote, a good father, as caring and concerned as any child would wish, end quote. He went on to earn a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry before meeting Joyce Flint, Jeffrey Dahmer's mother.
My childhood wasn't filled with any great tragedies or anything. There were good times and there were bad times. I think it was fairly normal.
Christmas time was always a very happy time. It was a time when there were no real arguments. Jeff was always happy at Christmas time because there was a lot of things to eat. Easter was always important to him because he got his chocolate bunny. Thanksgiving was always spent with my family, and there was always a lot of love and attention given to Jeff.
It wasn't a terrible childhood, though. You know, there were a lot of good times. It wasn't a really terrible time.
Were you Salem?
Never.
In your childhood, you have any memories of anything that you would associate with what you became?
No, that's the strange thing. I can't pinpoint anything.
The relationship was a strenuous one, with arguments being commonplace. Joyce suffered seizures during the pregnancy and would later suffer from severe mental breakdowns. She was prescribed several different kinds of medications and was reportedly taking as many as 26 pills a day to ease her pain, which many have contributed to her unborn son's future behavior.
I never saw any real violent arguments as far as physical hitting or anything like that, but there was a lot of yelling, a lot of tension in the house sometimes.
Once Jeffrey was born, he was witness to the tense relationship between his parents. Lionel worked a lot and didn't spend a great deal of time with his wife or children, including Jeffrey's brother David, who has remained hidden from the public eye and most likely has changed his identity.
Lionel, honestly, you have any guilt?
Well, I'm not. Sometimes I feel like I do, but that in that, I mean, I'm not a participant in it, and yet I feel guilty that I didn't spend more time with Jeff rather than with my wife.
I mean, they didn't let me run wild. They disciplined me, and so I felt accountable to them. But afterwards, after I left the home, that's when I started wanting to sort of create my own little world where I could be the one who had the complete control, where I didn't have to bow to anyone else's demands, and I just took it way too far.
Jeff, Dave, and his mother were happy, and I was happy that Jeff liked him and accepted him. They were 7 years apart, so I wouldn't say that they were extremely close in interests, but they did things together.
Jeff also had a brother, did he not?
Yes.
And he did change his name, is that correct?
Yes, he did change.
What is he
his name.
doing?
Well, we've promised to keep him completely secret.
He has
with
a
respect.
career
No, that's right.
and a
I
family.
don't know to be
Exactly.
specific, but is he happy?
He's very happy.
He's happy.
We're expecting a second grandchild. Everything's going well.
Oh, so that part of his life he has put aside. Were they
Yes.
close, the brothers?
7 years difference. So
Who was older?
Jeff was older. So, yes, they enjoyed themselves as brothers, but there was always that 7-year difference in interests. So they weren't as close as someone maybe that was 1 or 2 years different.
I guess I was a little bit naive. I didn't
think enough about, I was concentrating too much out of the premise that everything right with the spouse would automatically cause things to fall in place with the family. I just wish I had been I had a little bit more smarts to feel that I should be putting some of that effort with my son.
His mother Joy struggled with severe depression and often felt neglected by her husband, which only fueled the arguments further. This led to Jeffrey becoming a quiet and timid child, often noticed by his peers and teachers at school.
Well, now, when you saw it this shy, didn't you have some wonderment that something's wrong here?
Yeah, we involved him in soccer and tennis and 4-H. We raised lambs and chickens and on our 2-acre property. We involved him in all kinds of activities. We interacted at school. We tried to get him together with some kids. He did have a small circle of kids. It wasn't as if he was just totally off in a corner.
I disagree with the description of me as being so incredibly shy and introverted, because maybe that's the way my dad saw me, because there was so much tension in the home that I really didn't feel like being up and happy a lot of the times. But with my friends in school, I had a good time. We had good social life, and so I wasn't so extremely reclusive and self-centered as it portrays me.
There definitely were warning signs that I missed, but I didn't believe it, or it's hard to believe. One of the things I'd like to tell parents is don't disregard shyness. Things can be fomenting in that young mind. Dig. Just pull out everything that you possibly can. Don't stop. Yes, talk deeply and intensely. It'll come out, I think, eventually. I wasn't tuned to that. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, especially with men, you weren't really taught to be a psychologist. There aren't many books then.
My primary question is the origins of it. And if something can be learned about that, it may help other people avert problems.
No abuse, no physical abuse, no verbal abuse. It was a normal childhood in a good home. Something went awry in my thought life.
See, he withheld his true feelings. He was very good at disguising his feelings, but he was ashamed and embarrassed.
Did you notice anything that you would have said, something's the matter with this boy?
The only thing that became obvious by sheer accident, I came home early one day and he was passed out on the bed drunk. And then I found out that he had been in the liquor cabinet and he would replace the empty bottles with water. So he was a closet alcoholic. That's the only thing that flagged.
So it wasn't so much innate shyness as it was wanting to withdraw from tension and arguments and problems in the house.
That's how I saw it, yeah.
His brother was very, very ebullient and outgoing, just wanted to talk to everyone, not shy.
As he aged, he grew an interest in the remains of dead animals, which Lionel didn't find the least bit alarming. In fact, he thought that it was nothing more than an interesting hobby.
I was interested in taxidermy in high school and experimented with preserving the bones of dogs and things like that.
He examined them and he cut into them, cut them open to examine the insides of the animals. And by the way, a lot of people have been telling me that they've done the same thing, but they didn't turn out like Jeff. But there was one thing that was different with Jeff. He did what most all of us young males do when the hormones kick in tremendously, and he was doing something with them. Terrible things like that, although I've had friends who have told me they've done the same sort of thing.
This beagle that got hit. Wanted to see what the insides looked like, so just cut it open. It was already dead. And wanted to do, I guess, something shocking with it. So I took it and stuck it up on a pole in the neighbor's wooded area.
I can sort of see a fascination for, you know, wanting to see or for looking at the insides of animals, say for the first time. After you did it one time, what more is to be gained by looking at another dog's inside, the second or the third?
I don't know. It became a compulsion, and it switched from animals to humans.
Do you believe that there were warning signs that as a father you should have seen? If your kid is going around collecting dead animals, cutting them open and exploring them and that sort of thing, how do you not know that?
Well, as I said, it's heavily wooded, very rough terrain, and there are a lot of hiding places. He was extremely secretive and devious. I mean, if I had known about the roadkill, that would have been a red flag. I would have done something immediately, intervened. But before that, there wasn't really anything.
Would you call him a normal boy up to 12?
Yeah, except extremely shy.
Do you think the signs were there and he just missed them?
No, I don't think so. Because I had thoughts, I had fantasies, but there was no outward show of anything that was wrong.
You were pretty good at keeping it all inside.
Right, I kept it inside, didn't share any of my thoughts or emotions with anybody.
So how would I ever know?
No, you never saw any of it, as far as I know.
I did not really hear from anyone about any of these activities. And that's what really strikes me now, is if I would have known, what would I have done about it? I think I would have done a lot about it.
This included Jeffrey collecting skeletons and leading to the killing of certain animals, unbeknownst to his parents. Jeffrey would often question his father on what would happen if you were to place chicken bones in bleach, a technique that he would later use to dispose of his victims' remains. But again, these questions didn't raise any concern from either of his parents.
I feel it's wrong for people who commit crimes to try to shift the blame onto somebody else, onto their parents or onto their upbringing or living circumstances. I think that's just a cop-out. And my parents, my relatives, had no knowledge of what I was doing. They're absolutely not responsible for any of it in any way. And I take full responsibility.
He began to suffer from a huge drinking problem, which was noticed in the years that followed by his parents.
No teacher ever called up and said, come in and talk to us?
No teacher told us about the time that we found out later that he had a six-pack at high school.
Mm-hmm. How about did he express anger?
He kept it in. He did not express anger.
You never saw him yell at anyone or get violent with something, throw something?
No, I did not see him get angry with anyone physically.
But it was during his adolescence when Jeffrey realized that he was gay, but he didn't actually confide in his father, as he knew that he would be heavily against it due to his religious beliefs.
Did you ever consider talking to your parents, to your dad, about homosexuality? Is that something that you felt you could ever raise?
Early on, I really didn't know that much about it myself. All I knew was that it was something that was to be kept hush-hush, not talked about, not even thought about. So I just kept it all within me and never talked about social issues at all, really, with anybody.
If Jeff had come to you and said, Dad, I'm a homosexual, how would you have reacted?
I think I would have started in on a program to try to change his thinking.
So you would not have been accepting?
No, no.
Do you believe to this day that he is, as a homosexual, living in a state of sin?
If you believe the inspired word of God, which I do, that is sin. It's repugnant to God.
Do you think Jeff was ashamed of his homosexuality?
I think so.
He certainly hid it from you.
Mm-hmm. He sure did.
We talked about superficial things. Never really had a real deep heart-to-heart talk about what was going on inside our own minds. I was always a very private person. I didn't like to open up and share anything with anyone. I like to keep my thoughts to myself.
Why do you think that was?
Because from about 15 years on up, a great deal of my thoughts were basically unshareable with anyone.
You learned from your mother that Jeff has full-size male mannequin in his closet. I must tell you something seriously wrong, right?
We thought, again, it was related to his homosexual desires.
You then knew he was homosexual?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And you knew it. How did you handle that?
Not well.
Not very well. I'm a believer in absolute truth. I think people that don't believe in absolute truth are maybe prone to be more liberal with error. And I believe that the Bible teaches that that is something that you should avoid, just like too much food, too much drink, too much of anything. And I took him, it's something to be conquered, I felt. So I took him to a psychiatrist, and really it was for mostly, at that point, the drinking and the...
Did his brother have anything in that area? His brother gay?
No.
You feel that the absence, at least for a while, of a strong religious faith and belief
for some years
may have prevented you from instilling some of that in Jeff.
That's right.
First, I couldn't fathom how he turned out to be this far down the continuum. I mean, we're all on a continuum. We all do bad things. We all sin. He was at the extreme of this continuum. I couldn't at first understand how he could have done those things.
Lionel ended up divorcing Joyce in 1978 and married another, Shari Jordan, in Granger, Ohio. During his murder spree, Dahmer almost got caught several times, including an incident in which Lionel discovered a box which contained human remains. However, after Jeffrey refused to open it, this entire issue was dropped and never spoken of again.
I saw this box in the closet in his room. I said, I'm going to open it. And I started going down to the basement to get a tool to open up the box.
We got into a bit of an argument because I wouldn't open it up.
What were you thinking as he was making his way downstairs to open the box?
Well, I was outside, and I was thinking I've got to stop this from happening.
And he kept complaining that he couldn't even have 1 foot square of his own property to do with what he wants. And I said, I'm going to open it anyway, find out what's in here. Because that's what I thought it was, something related to pornography. And in fact, he convinced me to just wait till tomorrow, Dad, he said. And I'll open it for you then, but just don't do anything now. I don't want to disturb Grandma, because she was in a nearby room and she heard all this commotion.
But the box was never opened, not in my dad's presence. And so the lies continued.
If I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it. Then the next day he opened it and he said, see, this is what it was. And in fact, he had stuffed some pornographic magazines in there.
But we now know the box contained a human head.
Yes.
Your dad comes here to visit about once a month, but I get the impression that the two of you don't talk a lot about everything that happened, about the crimes in particular.
No, we don't discuss that because it's been gone over so thoroughly in the papers and the media that there's just really no point in going into any in-depth talks about it.
I have things that he wrote from school expressing love, and he told me that he loved me very much. And when Sherry and I went and visited him at the prison, talked to him on the phone, he expressed how grateful he was for bringing us together.
He sets up a satanic altar in his house. He dabbles in the occult, right? You're learning all this, but still no idea of murder.
Right.
But when you see satanic cult, isn't that some sort of... Well, you wrote in your book, more than anything, I allowed myself to believe that there was a line in Jeff, a line he wouldn't cross. It was a line that divided the harm he did to himself from the harm he might do to someone else. And you wrote, in the eyes of parents, I think children always seem just a blink away from redemption. No matter to what depths we watch them sink, we believe they need only grasp the lifeline and we can still pull them safely to shore. In other words, you knew there was something wrong. You knew he was bothered. Something was seriously wrong, but you never thought that he would harm someone else.
No.
Harm himself, yes. Did you think he might commit suicide?
He had tendencies to denigrate himself. And he even told his grandmother one time, well, if I die, just throw me down the field.
But you understand that what you did would lead your father to ask himself all kinds of questions.
That's true.
Where did I go
understand that.
wrong? Was there something I could have said or done to have prevented this?
Right.
Did I, in some way, create or contribute to the terrible acts my son committed?
I understand that. I just get angry with other people who think that they have a right to somehow try to blame my parents for what happened. That's not right at all. No one has the right to do that because they're totally innocent. They had no knowledge of it.
Do you forgive him?
Yeah, I forgive him now. I mean, it's really horrible to think of, to try to keep thinking of all the things he did, but even though he did all these horrible things, we forgive St. Paul for all the people that he killed in the name of God, in the name of Judaism. He was forgiven completely.
In 1988, September 26, he moves out of his grandfather's house. He brings home a Laotian teen and Marcella. That leads to an arrest, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Did that perk some sign into you, that he had Marcella someone?
Oh, yes. We hired someone, an attorney, to represent him, and I argued for a very, very firm follow-up on a psychological basis. Don't let him out. His attorney actually let him out 4 months.
Attorney let him out?
Let him out.
You mean the court
Wanted
let
to
him out?
let
Jeff
him.
was of
The
legal
court
age,
let him out.
so we could not stop him. Lionel wrote a letter to the judge requesting that Jeff get psychological help.
He let him out earlier than what his sentence had been given.
I got. And he got probation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You feeling close
I
to
feel
Jeff?
very close to Jeff, and it's going to continue until our death. And I feel good about it.
It was on July the 23rd, 1991, after over a decade of killing, when Lionel noticed that Jeffrey had missed a visit to his grandmother, so he called his apartment to check on him, only to instead speak to a detective. Initially, he was convinced that his son was actually a murder victim, before he was informed that he had actually been arrested on suspicion of murder himself, much to his surprise.
I hugged him and I said, Jeff, and he said to me, I really messed up this time, which is an understatement. And I said, Jeff, you really need help. The only way I can see is to have you judged insane so that you'll be put into a psychiatric hospital to really find out what's wrong. He hesitated at first, but later on, he really wanted to find out what was causing him to do these things.
I know my time in prison will be terrible, but I deserve whatever I get because of what I have done. I've hurt my mother and father and stepmother. I love them all so very much. I hope that they will find the same peace I am looking for.
Lionel always had a difficult time coming to terms with the true extent of his son's crimes. But for years, many have pointed the blame to Lionel, his wife and his ex-wife for negligent parenting and missing obvious signs regarding his behaviour at an early age. Over the next few months, during the ongoing trial and investigation, he learned that his son was completely sane and fully responsible for all of the murders. Lionel and his extended family were faced with harassing phone calls and reporters.
Just as recently as 2 weeks ago, we were sitting in a doctor's office and someone's made a statement that brought it to the forefront. And we never know when we'll see a picture of Jeff on TV, an article. We're never allowed to walk away from this.
Well, I'm extremely, very, very sorry that it happened to their loved ones. And if I could have done anything to prevent it, I would have. And I would ask them to forgive Jeff for what he did. He's paid the price, I believe, now.
I know the families of the victims will never be able to forgive me for what I have done. I promise I will pray each day to ask for their forgiveness when the hurt goes away, if ever. I have seen their tears And if I could give my life right now to bring their loved ones back, I would do it. I am so very sorry.
Jeffrey's grandmother, where some of the murders took place, was also the victim of vandalism and harassment. She would pass away not long after, in December of 1992, before Jeffrey Dahmer.
I talked with an attorney who has access to that prison quite intimately. And what happened was there was about 20 to 40 minutes of time where no one, that is the staff at the prison, no one knew the whereabouts of this person who took a barbell, or the rod, the bar from weightlifting equipment, and hit it and bludgeoned Jeff to death.
In other words, they let him be loose for all that time without knowing the whereabouts of a prisoner.
This attorney said he was confident that it was something that was allowed to happen, as he put it.
During his time inside, Lionel frequently visited his son and continued to support him. He wrote a book detailing his side of the story and defended himself as a parent.
You've read the book?
Yes, I read the book. My dad sent it to me about last week, and spent all night reading it. I was up all night reading it. It was quite a surprise to me, some parts of it.
I'm glad he wrote it.
Did it hurt? Was it painful to read?
Yes, it was painful. Some parts of it were, for me, were even fun to read. There were good parts. It wasn't all negative.
Was it emotional for you reading the book?
Yes, it was.
Tell me, what kind of feelings did you have reading it?
Deep regret.
He admitted that there were many times that Jeffrey showed troubling behaviour at a young age, but he merely ruled it down to regular childhood traits and never pressed the issues any further.
Is the book an invasion, do you think? Or is it...
No, I feel nothing but pride for him for writing the book and having the courage to bare his soul when he didn't have to. He didn't have to get involved with trying to, help me out and support me and be an emotional support for me. And I'll be grateful to him forever for it.
However, the book faced several legal issues, so most of the proceeds he earned from sales went to covering court costs. He was sued by the families of 2 victims for using their real names in the book without their consent, though the money that he did make from the sales went to the victims' families anyway.
Did you have a tough time facing the families of the people he killed?
Oh, yes. There were stares of hatred, comments.
At you?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
We just sat just motionless and sick to our stomach.
However, the sister of one of Dahmer's victims, Eddie Smith, Teresa, actually stood by Lionel's efforts. Quote, "If anyone has a right to write a book, it's them and the families. If that was my brother and my brother killed their son, I would not abandon my brother." End quote. In the book, Lionel does blame himself, admitting that he was emotionally distant from his son and missed obvious signs. He also confessed to having had similar murderous thoughts himself in the past and believed that this genetic trait was passed on to Jeffrey.
Did you know before you read this book that your dad had his own obsessions and fantasies, that he had thought about, that he had dreamed of committing murder, that he had had an obsession with fire and with explosives?
No, I don't think that's the type of thing one asks one's dad.
Were you surprised to read that about your dad?
Very surprised.
He appeared in several interviews over the years, but he and his wife Sherry always refused to change their last name and maintained that they still loved him and would always stand by him, even admitting to still being proud of the name Dahmer.
I'm proud of the name Dahmer. My father was a school teacher and a barber. He brought himself up from the bootstraps. His father and mother died very young age. I have a very good ancestry, and I'm proud of the name. The only thing is, when we go out, sometimes we'll give a different name so that, at a restaurant, for example, so that we don't cause a lot of people to change, to move their heads around and look and,
It must be terrible to live a life with a name that is the way things have felt about that name.
Right, you always hesitate to...
Now, Sherry, you married into this family.
Yes, I did.
How do you feel about the name?
I'm proud of my name. I used it in the business world. I use it still. I have no reason to deny who I am. We didn't do anything wrong.
At one point, however, they both faced a lawsuit by the family of Dahmer's first victim, Stephen Hicks, on the basis of negligent parenting. Lionel would sometimes try to speak out to raise awareness in such events, urging parents to not disregard shyness in their children, as it could cause severe isolation and issues later on in life. In 2020, Lionel still made appearances, such as in Jeffrey Dahmer, Mind of a Monster, but 2 years later he ended up suing the Netflix series Dahmer Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. The special allegedly never prepared Lionel before its release, which led to admirers of Jeffrey actually showing up to his property, and he had to start arming himself for his own protection. He was also upset that the special used recordings from his son's legal team without his permission. Though Shirley Hughes, the mother of one of Jeffrey's victims, Tony, was also unhappy with the special, stating that it was inaccurate and that, quote, "it didn't happen like that," end quote.
We're doing all right. We're retired. We have a lot of faith that has gotten us through this. And we have many good friends out there. You make friends. If you make friends in dire times, they stick with you. So we've lost a lot of family, a lot of people we knew, but we have a lot of friends who are proud of us, who are not ashamed of who we are, again, because we've done nothing wrong. So life is good.
Lionel and Sherry lived a quiet life together in Seville, Ohio, but Sherry passed away in January of 2023, and not long after, on December the 5th that same year, Lionel would follow with a heart attack at the age of 87. Was Lionel Dahmer actually a contributing factor to his son Jeffrey's brutal rampage? Could these actions have actually been prevented? Let me know what you think in the comments, and together we can continue seeking answers.